Just about a minute ago, Mexico delivered a precise economic hit to the United States. The target? America's auto industry, one of the largest sectors of the US economy and the core of cities like Detroit. This wasn't a military strike or a cyber attack, it was something more strategic. Mexico stopped exporting key auto parts and vehicles to the US, instantly choking a supply chain that American car manufacturers depend on. Factories have began shutting down, production lines freeze, workers are told not to come in, and vehicle prices rise overnight. What's happening now reveals a painful truth that America's auto industry isn't self-reliant. It's deeply dependent on its southern neighbor. This isn't a trade disagreement. This is a calculated move, one that strikes the US exactly where it's most vulnerable. The auto war begins now, and America doesn't see it coming. Let's dive in. The fuse that lit the fire. It all began with a pen stroke. President Donald Trump, fresh off his re-election, stands at a podium with the American flag behind him and announces a sweeping new policy, a 25% tariff on all cars and auto parts imported from Mexico. The goal, he says, is simple: bring manufacturing jobs back to American soil, reduce foreign dependence, and reignite the US industrial engine. He calls it a patriotic move, a bold reset, a line in the sand. But beneath the applause and headlines, something else happens, something few in the room fully grasp in the moment. With that single executive order, Trump doesn't just sign a policy, he detonates a supply chain decades in the making. For more than 30 years, the United States and Mexico have operated as one of the most tightly integrated automotive networks in the world. American cars aren't just made in America, they're built across borders. A single vehicle might have its engine assembled in Mexico, its electronics wired in Texas, and its final touches completed in Michigan. The entire system relies on speed, timing, and unbroken flow. Tariffs, especially at this scale, don't just raise costs, they block arteries. The new tariffs take effect on April 3rd. Within hours, border crossings become bottlenecks. Long lines of transport trucks stretch for miles outside key ports in places like Laredo and Tijuana. Drivers wait for clearance that doesn't come. Factories wait for parts that never arrive. $100 million worth of automotive components sits idle, caught between two governments and a storm of paperwork. Inside the headquarters of Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, phones ring off the hook. Executives scramble to assess the damage. Assembly schedules are thrown into disarray. Engineers and supply chain managers begin running projections. Not for weeks or months ahead, but for the next 72 hours, because that's how tight the timeline is. That's how fast a just-in-time manufacturing system can fall apart. This isn't a hiccup, it's not a glitch, it's a full-scale rupture, and the panic sets in quickly, because the parts stuck at the border aren't extras. They aren't stored in warehouses with weeks of buffer time. These are the components that should be arriving by morning and installed by afternoon. Without them, assembly lines freeze, output stops, entire plants go silent. What was meant to be a patriotic move has instead sparked a logistical emergency, and for the American auto industry, it's just the beginning. Mexico's silent strike. Mexico doesn't retaliate with outrage. There are no angry press conferences, no bold proclamations. There's no warning, no noise, just action. Swift, deliberate, and quiet. As soon as the US tariffs take effect, something changes across the border. Mexican factories begin holding shipments. Trucks scheduled to depart stay parked. Production doesn't ramp up to compensate, it slows down and then stops altogether. The silence in the plants is deafening. This isn't an act of vengeance, it's an act of survival. The 25% tariffs make it financially impossible for many suppliers to continue doing business as usual. Margins vanish overnight. For some, even trying to ship under the new cost structure would mean operating at a loss. So instead of pushing through, they pause. They protect their own. They wait. Not a single shot is fired. No official sanctions are announced. But the outcome is devastating all the same. President Claudia Sheinbaum doesn't scream into microphones or launch a media offensive. She offers a single, calm statement. There is room for talks. Those 5 words, spoken with discipline, carry the full weight of Mexico's strategy. They signal restraint, but also control. Mexico has options. It can respond economically, diplomatically, structurally, and it's already doing just that without raising its voice. Factories that once ran 24/7 are eerily still. Parts that are critical to American production are locked in warehouses. Border traffic shrinks not from regulation, but by choice. The move is measured, but it lands like a hammer blow on US auto production. Behind closed doors, the message from Mexico is unmistakable. We won't play games, but we won't be stepped on either. You can't tax us into submission when you rely on our labor to keep your wheels turning. And when President Scheinbaum says, "Do not bite the hand that builds your cars," it's not a threat, it's a reminder of the quiet power Mexico holds and its willingness to use it. Cracks in the assembly line. The fallout is immediate. Within just 24 hours of Mexico's silent halt, Stellantis, one of the largest automakers in the world, freezes production at one of its key plants in Mexico. By the 48-hour mark, the shock crosses the border. Assembly lines in Michigan and Indiana grind to a stop. There's no time to adjust, no safety net. Nearly 900 American workers lose their jobs. Just like that. Local news outlets scramble to cover the sudden disruption. A voice from the crowd, shaken and raw, captures the moment. Families are scrambling. Layoffs came with zero notice. And Stellantis isn't alone. Nissan pulls two of its best-selling models from the US market, not because demand disappears, not because of a design flaw or poor reviews, but because those vehicles are assembled in Mexico and the new tariffs make selling them a guaranteed financial loss. Shipping them to US dealerships under the current cost structure means bleeding money with every sale, so they vanish from showrooms. Across the industry, a brutal truth surfaces. The just-in-time supply chain, once hailed as an innovation in efficiency, isn't built to survive this kind of disruption. It's no longer just delayed, it's broken. Parts aren't trickling through, they're simply not coming. Every hour that passes without a solution widens the cracks. Automakers are left guessing, cutting, recalculating. The entire system, designed to run on tight timing and seamless coordination, is unraveling. One halted shipment, one idle worker at a time. And the worst part, there's still no end in sight. The collapse has a human face. Look past the headlines. Behind every statistic, every halted shipment, every frozen factory, there's a human being. This isn't just an economic story. It's personal, and it's painful. In Indiana, a father of 3 shows up for work like he always does, only to find security guards standing at the entrance. No shift, no answers, just a meeting in the break room where the news hits hard. Operations are suspended until further notice. The plant, which has been his second home for over 2 decades, falls silent. His tools stay on the bench. His future, suddenly uncertain. South of the border in Tijuana, a mother walks her usual route to a sprawling auto parts factory, but this morning the gates are locked. Notices are posted in Spanish and English. Production is stopped. Management can't afford to eat the cost of the tariffs. She calls her supervisor. No answer. Her income, her children's school tuition, her food budget, everything depends on that paycheck. In Ohio, a dealership owner watches the sunlight hit empty concrete. The shipment he's waiting for isn't just late, it's not coming. He scrolls through supplier emails again, hoping something's changed. It hasn't. Rows of parked trade-ins sit untouched. He's not selling, he's barely surviving. Across North America, stories like these multiply, quietly, devastatingly. People who have built their lives around a steady paycheck, who have depended on a system that once seemed unshakable, are now scrambling to stay afloat. This moment reveals something deeper than supply chain fragility. It reveals a trust that's been broken. This isn't just a manufacturing slowdown, it's a full-blown crisis of confidence. Employers can't promise stability. Families can't plan for the future. Communities built around industry are now filled with uncertainty. From Detroit to Monterey, from Lansing to Leon, the collapse is spreading. Not in a dramatic explosion, but like a slow leak, draining security, draining hope. This isn't just economics anymore. This is personal. This is what it looks like when the engine of a continent stutters, and no one knows how to start it again. A partnership turned power play. For decades, the United States and Mexico operate not as rivals, but as industrial partners, 2 halves of a single machine. The relationship isn't built on outsourcing or cheap labor alone. It's built on synchronization, efficiency, trust. One country manufactures transmissions, engines, critical components. The other completes the vehicles, assembles the interiors, handles final testing. It's not just a trade deal, it's co-production on a continental scale. Together, they create one of the most sophisticated automotive supply chains in the world. By 2024, the numbers tell the story. 4 out of every 5 cars produced in Mexico are bound for the US border. That's nearly 3 million vehicles each year, loaded, shipped, and sold to American consumers. Add in the value of auto parts and components, and Mexico's total exports to the US in this sector top $180 billion. The system is fast, reliable, and deeply profitable for both sides. And now, that artery is severed. What was once a seamless flow of parts and vehicles has collapsed into silence. Assembly lines that depended on the rhythm of cross-border logistics now sit idle. Warehouses are full, but nothing moves. The industrial bond that took decades to build is unraveling in weeks. This isn't just a hiccup in production, it's a shift in power, a reminder that mutual reliance can quickly turn into mutual vulnerability. What used to be a partnership has become a standoff. And Mexico, it's no longer playing defense. Washington doubles down. Despite the growing chaos across the auto industry, the White House doesn't flinch. There are no emergency rollbacks, no policy adjustments. Instead, President Trump's administration doubles down. There's no offer of exemptions, no lifelines for struggling manufacturers, no roadmap for what comes next, just a blunt directive: reshore your jobs, pay the tariff, be patriotic. The message is clear: America will rebuild its manufacturing base with or without the cooperation of foreign suppliers. We are rebuilding American greatness, no matter the cost, Trump declares from the podium. But that cost is already staggering, because building new manufacturing infrastructure in the US isn't like flipping a switch. It takes time, lots of it, years in most cases. It also takes billions in capital investment, workforce retraining, and supply chain redevelopment. And while large corporations might survive the turbulence, thousands of smaller suppliers won't. They don't have the margins. They don't have the cash reserves. Every week that passes without clarity is a death sentence for small and mid-sized manufacturers trapped in limbo. As layoffs spread and supply chains continue to unravel, the policy begins to look less like a long-term vision and more like blunt force. This isn't a well-calculated plan. This is a wrecking ball, and the debris is starting to pile up. So where does this all lead? The end of the beginning. Mexico isn't rushing to escalate. It's patient, strategic, and holding back on purpose. It still has leverage left: retaliatory tariffs, diplomatic pressure, and most importantly, time. While the United States scrambles to stabilize its factories, Mexico waits, watches, and adjusts. Meanwhile, US automakers are bleeding cash. Every day of stalled production costs millions. Inventories shrink, deadlines are missed, and contracts hang in jeopardy. And on the other side of the equation, consumers are already paying the price. Vehicle costs are climbing. Availability is shrinking. Buying a car in America suddenly becomes harder, slower, and far more expensive. Economic analysts are already sounding the alarm. One expert calls it bluntly: this may be the most sophisticated economic counterattack in modern trade history. Because at its core, this conflict is no longer just about cars. It's about something deeper: trust. What happens when your most reliable trade partner becomes your most powerful adversary? What happens when the foundation of decades-long cooperation begins to crack? This isn't just a bump in the road, it's a pivot point, and it's far from over. The auto war is only beginning. Both nations are locked into a high-stakes standoff with no clear end in sight. No side can afford to lose. And yet, neither one appears ready to back down. The assembly lines are silent, the dealerships are empty, and America's industrial heart has just skipped a beat. What happens next?